and welcome back to my channel. I hope you've had a good week. It's very hot over here where I am at the moment. Very hot, very sunny, very bright. A bit too bright for my liking and a bit too hot for my liking. I'm not a great fan of the summer. I prefer the winter. I'm a winter girl. Apologies last week as well. The video ran out on me at the end. I didn't quite time it well enough because normally I try and prevent that from happening, but sometimes that happens. But I'd covered pretty much everything I was going to say. I just got up to the epilogue and of the book Girls and Autism, which I've finished reviewing now. So go check out my other videos if you haven't seen the main review of that book. And I just got up to the epilogue, and the only thing I really wanted to say, where I got cut off, was the bit where he's talking about how autistic girls, and boys, I want to make it clear, not just autistic girls. I think this affects both boys and girls with autism, women and men, across the ages, but that some autistics can appear to be more socially able than they actually are, particularly if you have a high verbal ability, because you can kind of spend a lot of time sort of reading, particularly if you're a reader, and I'm a reader, I've read a lot, I read a lot. You do obviously intellectually take on board quite a few kind of social norms and stuff like that, which you can then kind of like parrot back. And I guess this comes under masking or camouflaging, and I know one of you wanted me to talk about that, and I'll try and talk about that more at length another time. But this kind of touches on that a bit because certainly I can appear more socially skilled than I actually am, just because I am a talker, and I think if you do have a gift for words, you can use that to come across maybe as like you have more comprehension of social stuff than you actually do, but it is kind of just stored. It's mechanical. It doesn't mean you actually have the ability to put that into practice in any meaningful sense, in terms of like the ability to make friends, to truly interact and connect with people, which I really struggle to do. I can kind of make an appearance of it, but it isn't actually what's happening, and then people think that I have more skill than I actually do, and it can lead to misunderstandings, because then I don't really feel that people understand the extent of the problem as I experience it, and it is a very profound, very, very profound problem that I have in my in terms of like connecting with other people. But because I can talk so well, people just see that, latch onto that, without really understanding the extent of a problem. And of course it can work both ways. An autistic who really struggles with speaking, like autistics who have additional speech and language problems, then people can sometimes underestimate their abilities, say socially maybe, because they can't talk and because talking is privileged in society. But some of them, their social problems might not be as bad as they appear just because they can't speak. And conversely, someone who can talk really well can make a great show of being social and yet actually have really, really bad social skills. And I think also there's a distinction that maybe should be drawn between social skills and understanding, because you can have social skills. Social skills can be learned. Autistic children are more likely to come across as really struggling on the social skills department because they haven't yet learned the skills. Like when I was a child, my social skills were not great, and I could often be very inappropriate. As time goes on, you're told over and over, you must look in the eyes. I've given up on that now. I used to try and make eye contact because I was told you should, but I did struggle with eye contact growing up. Teachers noticed that I had poor eye contact. That was something they flagged up, actually, that I had poor eye contact. But it was kind of a bit all over the place, because sometimes I made good eye contact, sometimes I made poor eye contact. But it's certainly something that teachers picked up, that I had poor eye contact. So I had what considered to be poor eye contact at least some of the time. But, you sort of try and, people tell you to do it, so you try and force yourself to do it even though it's uncomfortable. So that's a social skill, I guess. But it doesn't mean you have understanding. So I would say I do believe there's a distinction between social skills and social understanding. Social skills can be learned. An autistic can learn them. Not all autistics, like it depends what type of autism you have, but if you've got like a good cognitive verbal ability, it is possible to learn some of the social skills. But that doesn't mean you actually have the social understanding, and it's the social understanding that gets you by in life. You can mechanically parrot the social skills, but it doesn't mean you actually understand them. That's the point I wanted to make. But I think it does affect autistic men as well as autistic women. And I'm not altogether sure that there's a clear-cut divide between female autism and male autism. I think that's a bit of a black and white misnomer. I think certainly there are patterns that maybe are more likely, on average, potentially, if you're female versus if you're male, but these aren't given. There's a lot of variation, and I do think it's a bit too narrow and risks creating new stereotypes just to kind of pigeonhole women as having this type of autism and men as having this type of autism, just as there's no such thing as male or female brains. Some about Cohn beg to differ, but I thoroughly disagree with that idea. I do not believe in male brain or female brain. And I do not think there's male autism or female autism. It's just way more complex than that. But women are underdiagnosed. I actually think that the reason women are underdiagnosed is more likely because of confirmation bias, because teachers and, say, parents and other people maybe do not expect autism to be in girls and women as often as, say, in boys and men, so they don't look for it. And when girls and women are displaying autistic signs, these are then explained away as something else. So I actually personally think, although there are some differences, because obviously girls are socialised differently to boys, so they might display slightly different interests to boys and so on. They're less likely to be trains and more likely maybe to be dolls and things like that, because there are these gendered, we are in a gendered world and we mustn't forget that, and what you're exposed to as a child is obviously going to influence what things you might then come to be interested in. But I also think autistics are a bit more androgynous in general, and maybe not quite as kind of like into the whole female, this is for girls thing, this is for boys thing. I could talk about this more maybe elsewhere because I'm not going to go into it in great detail now. But there are these socialising influences at play nonetheless. It still will affect autistics, but so that does affect maybe a little bit how autism might present on average. I'm not denying there are maybe some on average differences between boys and girls with autism, but I do think it's more likely to be the case. The greater influence, I think, is confirmation bias and professionals just not expecting autism in girls, or when they do see it, explaining it away as something different. Even though they might not even be consciously aware that they're doing this. But I could talk about that maybe another time. So that's the end of video number 1 now. In video number 2, I'm going to be, now I've finished that book, now we can, I've done a review on that, I've talked about that long enough now, I think. I'm going to be moving on now because I quite like to read, and this is going to take more than one video, so I'll be coming back to this next week and maybe the week after that. We'll see how we go on. In my next video, I want to start to read to you my diagnosis report because I've never actually done that before. Now, I've got 2 reports, so in this video I'm just going to focus on one of them. I'm going to be reading it out to you, and again the following week I'm going to be focusing on the second report. Obviously, I'm not going to say any names because obviously it's 100% confidential. But I want to read to you my diagnosis report because it just might interest you. So moving on to video number 2 now.